Donna Smith from Jasper County REMC in Rensselaer, Indiana. Welcome to Along Those Lines.
Support for this podcast comes from PLP. Since 1947, PLP has helped protect the world's most critical connections by creating stronger and more reliable networks. PLP's precision-engineered products and asset inspections are trusted by electric utilities worldwide when they need solutions that perform better and last longer.
Hi, everyone. This is a podcast about electric cooperatives, the work they do, and the challenges they face. I'm your host, Scott Hoffman. Hurricanes, wildfires, tornadoes, snow and ice storms, co-op systems across the country are vulnerable to these and other destructive natural events. Typically, when a state is hit with such a disaster and the power grid is impacted, utilities will work with the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, to rebuild to where the grid was before the event. Lately, though, co-ops have been working to secure federal reimbursements for restorations that go further to harden the system and create more resilience. In this episode, we talk to Mike Heinen. He's the CEO of Jeff Davis Electric Co-op in southwest Louisiana, which has been hard hit lately by hurricanes and tropical storms and has been emphasizing hardening in its restorations. Later, we'll hear from Martha Duggan. She's Senior Regulatory Issues Director at NRECA and the association's point person on working with FEMA. Mike, welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for talking to us.
Thanks for having me.
So why don't you start off by telling us a little about Jeff Davis's territory, where you're located, how many members?
Well, if you can picture South Louisiana, they always call it the boot. You can picture the heel of the boot, southwest Louisiana. That's pretty much my service territory. We have parishes in Louisiana, so there's 5 parishes that I serve. I used to have 9,000 members. Now I have 7,500, and that's completely due to Hurricane Laura and the slow process of getting everything back. But we're the smallest co-op in the state, but we're tough.
Yeah, you're sort of ground zero for hurricanes lately.
Yeah, that's for sure. Hurricane Laura and Hurricane Delta, and we picked up and put down the tent city 3 times because it was in harm's way when the linemen were here, so I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah, and so you've had lots of experience with hurricanes. I think Rita hit you guys 15 years ago, but last year was a particularly tough summer. Direct hits from 3 big storms, like you said, Laura, Beta, and Delta. Give us a quick rundown on some of the damage that those storms caused and some of the upheaval in terms of the recovery.
Well, you had mentioned Rita 15 years ago, and I thought that would have been my worst storm ever, and I wished it would have been. About half of my transmission lines went down then, but Laura came along and everything we had put up for Hurricane Rita went down again, plus the rest of my transmission system went down. So it was the worst storm we ever had. It was about, I'm saying 150 mile an hour sustained winds that came through. It was on August 27th. So from August 27th to December the 20th, we were in a tent city in the Lake Charles area with 800 plus linemen trying to put everything back together. That's about a 4-month period at a tent city. And we worked 16 hours a day, 7 days a week to get electricity back to anybody who could take it at that point in time.
That's unheard of for recovery. And then you kept getting kind of hit by storms after that as well. So it just complicated it. Now, ordinarily, when a power grid goes down during a kind of sort of a declared natural disaster, there's a protocol for working with the federal government, particularly FEMA and Department of Energy, to get the system restored and to get reimbursed for those costs.
Yes.
Why don't you sort of give us a level set on what the normal process is for that? And then I want to ask you how you did things differently this time.
I can only compare what we did for Rita and then what we did for Laura. And they're totally different because 15 years ago when Rita hit, if you'll remember, Katrina had just hit as well. And there were everything happening on the east side of the state. And all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, we get hit on the southwest side of the state with Hurricane Rita. Back then, FEMA had a certain set of regulations and rules that you had to follow. Well, over the past 15 years, those regulations have changed drastically. So I did it the first time, and I knew better not to try and do it again the second time. So I hired a company that specializes in FEMA recovery and making sure that we have all of our I's dotted, T's crossed, and everything else, so reimbursement comes faster. Now, I say faster. I didn't say fast, but faster. So from that time to this time, I learned you need help. And don't ever hesitate to try and get some companies in here to help you out, because that's part of what FEMA pays for is the assistance that comes in. So it was well worth what we did to hire a company to come in and help us out.
Okay, so talk a little bit about what was different. What did you do different? What was it like working with FEMA with these different sort of protocols and different, I guess, demands that you were making or wanting to get things either done quickly or done more efficiently?
It was like night and day with us. Remember I said Katrina hit? Katrina hit, and all the resources and all the FEMA people were in the New Orleans area back when Katrina got hit. 3 weeks later, we got hit with Rita, and FEMA wasn't around. And that's the worst storm I've ever had at that time. So we didn't really know what to do. So we hired whoever we wanted and went to work. And after the fact, I wrote about 100 different letters to FEMA saying this was our only source available. That's why we hired them. And I had to backtrack just about everything I did. And it took double and triple the work to try and get approval for what we've done, because we didn't, quote, go out for bids or didn't go out to see who was the most efficient at this time. Of course, again, when Katrina hit, all the resources were sucked up by the east part of the state. So I had to get poles some of the poles came in from Canada. And it was very high cost, very high dollar back then. And I knew this time there were rules and regulations and we had to follow. So the difference this time is we had the company come in, and every time I said we're going to need this, they automatically went to whatever portal. And I'm not savvy with technology, but they put everything on a portal. And then next thing you know, they had people from all over the place bidding on it. And you take the lowest one and you go with that. And so far it's been a lot different between the two storms. Reimbursement as far as questions from FEMA, and it's a lot less headache for me, which I enjoy for sure.
So what was the timing of it? Had you decided before Laura hit that we're going to go this route, or was it after Laura hit you're like, we're not doing that again, we're going to call in some help and we're going to do this a different way?
I go back to Rita. Even 15 years after Rita was there, it wasn't closed out at FEMA.
Right.
We had a company, same company came in for Laura, that came in probably 8 years ago and went over our books and told us what everything was. A company called Royal Engineering. Well, about a week before the storm hit, maybe let's go 3 or 4 days before Laura hit, I called them and said, hey, you remember me? And they said, absolutely not. Who is this? So I said, well, you may not remember me, but I have a contract with you and you need to get over here. So 3 days before the storm hit, they were sitting in front of me going, okay, what do you think? I said, I think y'all are going to be right here beside me. So go ahead and get the team you need ready. And they had done a fantastic job. I knew well to get ahead of time, and ahead of that, I have a lot of relationships with people in the area. They have an air base. It used to be an air base. It's an old Army air base, Chenault Airfield in Lake Charles. Well, I acquired some space, nothing but concrete as far as the eye can see, and that's where we had our tent city. So that was another win for me and Jeff Davis, so it went well.
Yeah. I know some of the things that FEMA requires is that the way you rebuild not necessarily be an upgrade to the system. It's got to sort of be the way it was. Otherwise, they won't pay for it. Can you describe some of the difficulties associated with wanting to make your system more robust while you're rebuilding and navigating that with FEMA and the reimbursements?
Oh, sure. I had lots of thoughts in my mind that I wanted to do. So now's the time to do it. So we're looking at it, and there's categories. There's category B, there's category F, and category B is your emergency work that you do. Now FEMA's trying to call that category F, and it's a big back and forth between my guys and FEMA. But when it's all said and done, for repetitive losses like we had, this is my fourth storm. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, fourth storm that I've been through, and it's been repetitive losses. There is mitigation dollars that you can get to do something with that. But don't try and do that before you get approval to do that, because if you go in with anything before all the approvals are done, you are, I'll call it disqualified. They will not reimburse you. So you have to follow their rules. And don't get me wrong, FEMA, I wouldn't be here without them. So FEMA is great, but you must follow their rules. And that's part of what we're doing now, is trying to come up with a hardened, redundant system. Everything we went back before with our transmission system was wood, and we're trying to do something different and go with steel this time. And in our particular service territory, it's in that area, it's marsh. And you just don't just go throw something in the ground and not engineer it to death. So we're engineering it to death and trying to get approval for everything to go back to the coast with a hardened system.
And there's been storms come through, but not necessarily direct hits on Jeff Davis. Have you had anything that's sort of tested it enough to say, okay, yeah, that's working?
Not at this point, because we hadn't get not a steel pole in the ground yet.
Okay.
It's been a year since Laura hit, and the process is still continuing. I can't afford to put Jeff Davis in a situation where we're doing something without approval with the money to follow it first, because then, like I said, I only have 7,500 members here. So if I go spend millions of dollars and then it doesn't get approved, that's just not going to work.
Right. Okay. Have you been working with the statewide or other co-ops to get their feedback and maybe sort of give them some feedback about what you're doing and what's working?
Absolutely, especially with Hurricane Ida that came through. I'm in touch with my fellow managers there, and I keep telling them, don't worry, this too shall pass, as they say. But it can be very difficult to try and get through a situation like this. But mostly that what I'm going back and forth and telling all co-ops that I see, everything is great with FEMA. You have to go through the process. You have to have a bank that's willing to let you borrow all the money, which is pretty expensive and pretty hefty bill. But the interest that you pay for those money that you borrow is not covered by FEMA funds. That's our problem at this point. There's a bill in Congress that's looking at it, and that's what I'm asking all co-ops to do is take a look. If that doesn't pass, then I'm still in a bad situation. But Congressman Graves, which is a Louisiana U.S. congressman, is the one who is a chair of the committee that has FEMA as part of its bailiwick in there. So he's been pushing it, and I've been, every time I get in front of a microphone, that's what I keep saying is I need those interest rates covered.
Anything else in the work that you've been doing with FEMA, particularly in the last year when you've had all that damage to recover from? I know you said that working with them has been good. It's been hard and not easy and not fast. Are there other things that you would change about the way that FEMA does business in these circumstances?
I don't want to knock FEMA, okay? But there are certain things that they could do that probably could improve the situation, one being a unified set of rules. And what you say is going to happen before the storm is actually what happens, and then don't change the rules on me as I go. Or they have such turnover in all different places that you talk to one person, they say, here's what you need to do, and then they leave, and then you talk to another person and say, oh no, that's completely wrong. This is what we expect you to do and how we expect you to file it. And that's why I have that company that came in to keep track of who's saying what, when, and where, and to make sure that what we're doing is what we're supposed to do and what they have told us to do.
That's interesting, yeah. You talked about changing to steel poles. Are there other things you're doing, more undergrounding, other hardening things that you would like to do as part of this rebuild?
We're looking at part of the transmission system. We have to cross the intercoastal waterway with a 69 kV line and a 138 kV line. We're looking at going underground instead of overhead in those particular areas. Now, the actual lines to the coast, they still have to be overhead because it's just too far to put all that underground. You couldn't afford to do it, and it's just not cost effective. But that's one of the things, is to go underground underneath the intercoastal waterway. Right now, if you can picture our system, intercoastal waterway is sort of like a line that's drawn in Cameron Parish, where anything below that, there's nothing there except on the coast itself. So right now, the coast itself does not have connection to the power grid. I'm actually generating power at sites that used to be the substations and just putting it on distribution lines going to the people who are down there at this point, which is amazingly expensive to do.
And diesel.
Yes, and diesel and LNG.
Okay.
Tremendously expensive to do that. But if I don't do that, they wouldn't have power there right now because I'm trying to upgrade the system and do steel poles. If we didn't have those generators, I'd have had to put wood poles back along the way, and then we'll have the same thing the next time another storm comes through and do this all over again. So we decided to put generators, get them serviced with generators, and try to get the mitigated funds necessary to upgrade the system. So that's what we're working on. And so far, so good, hopefully.
And the members at the end of the line, have you been able to kind of keep in touch with them about what's going on and why some of these permanent changes haven't been made yet, and that, it's coming and we're working on it?
Yes, I'm staying very much in contact with the powers that be in the lower Cameron Parish. Amazingly enough, our co-op, Jeff Davis Electric Co-op, is 60% commercial industrial and 40% residential, whereas a DEMCO in Baton Rouge is 95% residential.
Right.
That's only because we have the coastline right there in Cameron. It's susceptible to storms, as you know, but it is a area that needs to be served. And that particular area serves a lot of infrastructure that serves the northeast of the United States and all parts therein. So it's a very critical system. So we want to do it right this time.
Yeah. These are like fisheries, oil and gas industries, things like that?
Oil and gas and fisheries. If you ever pull up a map of Louisiana that shows all the pipelines, you'd be amazed how many pipelines are coming through southwest Louisiana.
Yeah. And so the system as it stands right now, is it pretty well functional other than that, the parishes you were talking about that are on diesel? Is everything else sort of back to where it should be, or is there other things kind of more inland that you're looking to do as part of the reconstruction?
As part of the reconstruction, and this is category B, category F, not only where the storms came in, our whole system was affected. We had 100% of it down, and 90% of it took some major damage. So we put it back as best we could so everybody gets served. Now we go back to the areas that we put it back and actually put it like it's supposed to be. And we're going substation by substation and doing that. And, if there's a tree that should have been cut but wasn't, we'll cut that. If there's a pole that should have been replaced and we just kind of stood it up, we'll go ahead and replace that. Make sure the guy wires are where they're supposed to be. It was the strongest hurricane this area has ever seen.
Yeah, it was amazing. And I mean, the devastation that we saw in the photos out of Jeff Davis were incredible. Any advice for other co-ops? Working with FEMA is hard. Anything kind of top level advice, just how to get it right and do what you guys are doing?
Top level advice, don't try and do it yourself. Get help. Get help that actually specializes in this kind of recovery, that knows how to talk FEMA's language. Let people help you.
That's great, Mike. Thanks so much for being on the podcast and good luck.
Thank you very much. Appreciate y'all.
Next, we'll hear about how the industry as a whole is changing the way it works with FEMA. But first, let's pause for a word from our sponsor.
Along Those Lines is made possible by PLP, who wants you to know that before and after every storm, America's electric co-ops count on PLP's products and services to help harden systems and restore power. PLP's precision-engineered products and comprehensive asset inspections are trusted by energy and communication providers worldwide to perform better and last longer. To learn more, visit plp.com.
I'm Michelle Hutchins from Okefenokee REMC in Nahana, Georgia. You're listening to Along Those Lines.
Welcome back. Next up, we have Martha Duggan. She's Senior Regulatory Issues Director at NRECA, and she works closely with FEMA to ensure their rules and policies take electric co-op priorities into account. Martha, thanks for being here. This is your second time on the podcast, I think, so welcome back.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here with you again, Scott.
Okay, so Mike Heinen from Jeff Davis was just telling us about how he's sort of working differently with FEMA recently to harden his system during these post-storm rebuilds. Is that something that FEMA is becoming more receptive to?
Yeah, FEMA is definitely far more focused on mitigation efforts than the agency has been in the past. What we're discovering, of course, is that as we have increasing numbers of storms and storms of increased intensity, we really need to focus on hardening electric cooperative systems. And so FEMA has been very open and accommodating to utility system hardening projects that we've proposed to them.
And Mike mentioned that his co-op is working with a consultant that helps them sort of file their paperwork with FEMA, manages the reimbursement process. Are there a lot of co-ops doing that? And do you have any advice for co-ops that are working with third parties on things like this?
Sure. So some co-ops have actually procured that kind of assistance and expertise in working with FEMA. In Mike's case, it obviously made a lot of sense because of the drastic extent of damage that he suffered. Some co-ops have enough experience, unfortunately, with storms and FEMA that they've developed this expertise in-house, and so they go it on their own, if you will. I guess one caution I would raise in general is in working with consultants or deciding who to hire. If a consultant or actually any service provider that you're working with tells you that they are FEMA qualified, your spidey sense ought to light up because FEMA never pre-approves anything. Now, they may have a lot of experience working with FEMA, and so what I recommend is that co-ops, as they're assessing, should they bring a consultant on or not, ask a lot of questions. Find out if this person or firm has done a lot of work with electric cooperatives. Find out the work history of the principals at the firm. A lot of them come out of the agency, and that's obviously important for being able to successfully help an electric cooperative submit an application and be reimbursed.
Great. And now you have extensive experience with FEMA and the way they make their rules. And one of the things we hear fairly consistently is how frustrating it can be to work with FEMA, with the forms and the process. Can you give us an idea, knowing as much as you know, why these layers of rules are in place, why they're needed, and why it's so important to follow them?
Yeah, so a couple of thoughts on that, Scott. First is FEMA is charged with being a steward of federal tax dollars. So they are spending our tax money to reimburse folks and to make sure that damage expenses get reimbursed. And so they take that role very seriously. And I, as a federal taxpayer, I kind of appreciate that. FEMA also has been subject more frequently in recent years to lots of congressional questions about why do these disasters seem to be costing us so much more money? Where do the dollars go? And there have been some incidents where FEMA has inappropriately reimbursed not electric cooperatives, but lots of money has been spent in ways that Congress didn't intend it to be spent. So FEMA's putting in a lot of these rules and regulations, and most of them go to documentation. So I always say there are 3 rules of working with FEMA. Number 1, document. Number 2, document. And number 3, document. Because FEMA has also undergone a lot of stress and pressure, particularly in the last 18 months. You know, the agency has been very active in the COVID response and the vaccination programs. There's a lot of turnover at the agency. And because the process can take so long, you're going to deal with different FEMA staffers on your way through it. So having that documentation is just really critical.
Great. And as bad of a rap as FEMA can sometimes get, they do seem to be fairly receptive to input from the utility sector. I know they recently launched a program that offers funding to states to help them make utilities more resilient, what you mentioned about the mitigation efforts. What is that program, and is it something that co-ops can actually benefit from?
Yeah, so I think you're referring to the BRIC program, or Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities program. It's a new mitigation initiative at FEMA. It's been funded at very high levels. And so there's a lot of interest in access to that money all across sectors that are impacted by natural disasters. The applications that came in for the first round of funding far exceeded the level of funding that was available. So what I've been recommending to electric cooperatives is, because they have to apply through their state or local government to access those funds, they want to be sure that their mitigation projects are included in the FEMA approved hazard mitigation plan that each of those levels of government has to have on file. Because if the project is not in that hazard mitigation plan, BRIC funding will not be made available. So we're learning a lot about BRIC. FEMA has put out some really good training programs and webinars. We've been pushing those out to our members for their use.
So from your perspective, has working with FEMA changed for the better over recent years? Are there other things that you can mention that you've seen FEMA do that's helped co-ops and utilities more generally?
Yeah, well, certainly at the federal level, FEMA is very receptive to the calls that I make to them and the emails that I send to them. During the NRECA legislative conference, we always get to visit with high-level FEMA officials. So they're always interested in our input. Recently, the agency put out a notice of inquiry asking how they could improve their programs so that they better serve underrepresented communities, and that includes rural communities and communities that are economically stressed. So that's a benefit to our members. So I wouldn't say it's gotten better or worse. I would say it's just gotten different.
Great. One last question for you, Martha. With climate change and the increase in unusual weather events globally, are you advising co-ops that you talk to that even if they haven't necessarily had to deal much with FEMA in the past, that they ought to make sure that they know the rules and know how to deal with the agency because the vulnerability of their territory may be changing?
I absolutely am recommending that, Scott. You know, one of the saddest calls I can get is from a person at a co-op saying, I've never dealt with FEMA before. We've just gotten a presidentially declared event. What do I do? It's really important to be aware of the FEMA program, be aware of the regulations that you have to follow, have all of the paperwork that you need on file, and hope that it never happens. You know, be prepared for the worst and hope for the best.
That's great. Martha, these are great insights. We appreciate you coming on and sharing them with us. Thanks.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks to you, our listeners, and to our sponsor, PLP. For more on this and other podcasts, visit us at electric.coop. Until next time, for Along Those Lines, I'm Scott Hoffman.
I'm Sarah Thielbar from New Hampshire Electric Co-op in Plymouth, New Hampshire. Thanks for listening to Along Those Lines. Subscribe and rate us on your favorite podcast app.